The community hall was already full when the blind girl arrived with her mother. People were talking, laughing, and adjusting their seats while the soft buzz of excitement filled the room. It wasn't a grand event, just a local gathering where musicians from the area could share their talent. A few small lights hung from the ceiling, and a simple wooden stage stood at the front of the hall with a black piano placed neatly in the center. Though the setting was simple, the energy felt vibrant. Everyone seemed ready for an evening of music. The girl, walking carefully while holding her mother's hand, moved slowly through the entrance. She kept her head slightly tilted as if listening to the sounds around her. She couldn't see the room, but she could hear every footstep, every whisper, and every slight movement of the piano keys as performers tested them. Her face remained calm, though she held her mother's arm a little tighter than usual. Her mother guided her toward the stage, wanting her to explore the piano before the performances began. It was something they usually did so she could get a feel for the instrument. But as they approached, they noticed a crowd forming on the side of the room. People were busy surrounding an older musician, a world-renowned pianist who had been invited as a special guest. He had spent years performing on global stages and carried himself with the confidence of someone who had been admired for a long time. Some people whispered his name with excitement, sharing stories of his past performances. The blind girl had heard about him too, though not in a personal way. She only knew he was respected by many and had the kind of talent others dreamed of reaching. She did not think meeting him would matter much, but she did feel the pressure of playing in front of someone like him. Even though she couldn't see him, she understood how people reacted around him. The air around that side of the room felt heavier, filled with admiration. She kept walking, gently letting her hand brush against the side of the piano to get an idea of its position. She was just about to sit down when the renowned pianist's voice suddenly rose above the crowd. His tone was sharp, pointed, and filled with confusion. "Who's letting her touch the piano?" he asked loudly. The voices around him fell silent for a moment. Then people began to turn their heads, trying to understand what he meant. The girl paused, her fingers frozen on the edge of the piano. She wasn't expecting attention, and certainly not from him. The pianist stepped forward a little, folding his arms as he watched her hand move hesitantly across the surface. He didn't lower his voice. Instead, he spoke as if the whole hall needed to hear him. "What's the point?" he said. "She can't even see the keys." His words spread through the room like a sudden chill. Some people looked away, uncomfortable, while others exchanged awkward glances. A few tried to smile politely, not wanting to seem rude by reacting, but their eyes revealed shock at his statement. The girl's mother instinctively stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. Her grip tightened protectively, and she tried to keep her voice steady as she said, "She's here to perform. It's just a community event." But the renowned pianist gave a dismissive laugh. "Perform?" he repeated. "What kind of performance do you expect from someone who doesn't even know where the notes are?" A few people forced a small laugh, unsure of what else to do. They didn't mean harm, but the moment made them nervous. Some looked at the girl with sympathy, others with curiosity, wondering how she would respond. The blind girl stayed perfectly still. Her hand slipped slightly from the piano's edge, and the warmth she had carried when she first entered the room suddenly drained away. She wasn't used to being mocked in public. She had heard rude comments before, but never from someone so respected or in front of such a large audience. Inside, she felt a quick sting, a sharp sense of embarrassment. She couldn't see the faces around her, but she could feel their attention pressing heavily in her direction. She felt their silence, their uncertainty, their quiet judgment. Her heart beat a little faster as she tried to steady herself. Her mother gently whispered, "It's all right. Don't worry." But her voice carried its own tremble. One of the event volunteers, a young man standing beside the stage, tried to calm the situation. He stepped forward and said, "Sir, she's on the list to perform. She's welcome to sit at the piano." The pianist raised an eyebrow and shook his head as if the volunteer had said something ridiculous. "I'm not trying to be harsh," he insisted, though his tone still sounded sharp. "I'm just being realistic. Playing the piano is difficult enough for people who can see every detail. How is she supposed to manage it?" Someone in the audience tried to change the subject by asking him a question about his own performance, but he didn't respond. His attention stayed fixed on the girl. "This piano isn't a toy," he added. "It requires skill." The girl's stomach tightened. She wasn't angry. She rarely reacted with anger. Instead, she felt a quiet ache inside, the kind that comes from being looked at as if you don't belong. She wondered if she should just turn around and leave, Her mother's hand on her shoulder stopped her, but her body still felt tense, unsure of what to do. The murmurs in the room grew as more people noticed the situation. Some whispered things like, maybe she shouldn't play, not out of cruelty, but because they didn't want to see her embarrassed further. Others defended her softly, saying she had every right to try. The air was thick with mixed emotions. The girl took a slow breath to keep herself steady. She wanted to say something, but the words felt trapped in her chest. She didn't like to argue. She didn't want to prove anything to anyone. All she wanted was the chance to touch the keys and let her fingers move the way they always did. Playing the piano wasn't just an activity for her. It was the one place she felt free, the one world where her lack of sight didn't matter. But at that moment, with everyone watching, she felt small. Her mother spoke again, more firmly this time. She's practiced for years. She knows what she's doing. The pianist shook his head slowly and replied, knowing isn't enough for something like this. His voice carried the weight of arrogance, the kind that comes from believing one's own standards are the only valid ones. Another volunteer approached, trying to ease the tension. Let's just continue with the schedule, he suggested. She's allowed to be here. Everyone gets a chance to perform. But the damage was already done. The girl could feel it in the silence around her. Even without sight, she sensed the hesitation, the doubts, the shifting moods of the crowd. She took a tiny step backward, unsure if she should stay. Her breath felt a little unsteady as she tried to swallow the tightness in her throat. The world around her, usually softened by her sense of sound, now felt loud and overwhelming. The renowned pianist sighed loudly, as if tired of the whole situation, and muttered something about standards being lowered. Some people nodded out of habit, others avoided looking at the girl altogether. She didn't say a word, but deep inside, something small began to spark a feeling she didn't quite recognize yet. A mix of determination, quiet courage, and the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, she could still sit at the piano and find the peace she came for now. Though, the room held its breath around her, filled with judgment, worry, and the heavy weight of a moment she never expected to experience. The hall slowly settled again, though the uneasy feeling still floated in the air like dust that refused to fall. The blind girl stood quietly beside the piano, trying her best to breathe normally after everything that had just happened. Her fingers curled gently at her sides, still remembering the coldness of the piano edge she had touched a few minutes earlier. She hadn't played a single note yet, but somehow she already felt exhausted. Her mother leaned toward her and whispered softly, "You don't have to play if you don't want to. We can go home." The girl didn't answer right away. Her chest rose and fell slowly as she listened to the voices around her. People were moving, taking their seats again, pretending nothing had happened. But she could hear their whispering. Some of it was sympathetic, some of it uncertain. She heard phrases like, "Poor girl," and "maybe she shouldn't be forced." And this is uncomfortable. She didn't blame them. They weren't the ones who accused her of not belonging. They were just unsure how to react. She kept her face calm, though her thoughts were tangled. She wasn't angry at the man who mocked her. She was hurt, yes, but not angry. The pain felt more like a weight pressing on her chest, making it hard to breathe. Like a reminder that the world still carried expectations she couldn't always meet. The volunteer from earlier approached her again, speaking gently. "If you still want to perform, you can. No one will stop you, but only if you're comfortable." She nodded a little, though her voice didn't come out. The volunteer seemed to understand the hesitation, so he gave her a quiet smile and stepped back. Her mother guided her to a chair near the stage, so she could sit for a moment. The girl lowered herself slowly, her hands resting on her lap as she tried to gather herself. Her mind kept replaying the pianist's words, echoing in a way that felt heavier each time. She tried to push them out, but they clung to her thoughts like tiny thorns. The renowned pianist, meanwhile, had returned to the crowd around him. He seemed unaffected by the discomfort he caused, answering questions about his own performances as if nothing had happened. Every so often, he glanced toward the girl, but his expression didn't soften. If anything, it stayed cold and dismissive. The girl tilted her head slightly, listening not just to him, but to everything around her: the footsteps on the wooden floor, the soft rustle of people adjusting their clothes, the low hum of conversation. These sounds helped her steady her breathing. For years, she had trained herself to rely on her hearing more than anything else, not just to move around but to understand people. Their voices carried emotions that their faces did not. A few moments later, the volunteer returned with a cup of water and placed it carefully into her hands. She murmured a small thank you and took a sip, the coolness giving her a little relief. You know, the volunteer said softly, not everyone thinks like him. Don't let one person make you doubt yourself. She listened to his words, appreciating the sincerity. Though she still felt unsure, she didn't want pity or comfort. She wanted understanding. But she also understood that no one knew what it felt like to be her in that moment. Her mother took her hand gently and whispered, "We came here so you could enjoy yourself. Whatever you choose, I'll support you." The girl nodded slowly. She knew her mother meant it. She always had. For several minutes, she sat quietly, listening to the sounds of the hall as other performers prepared. Someone tested a guitar, strumming gently. Another person tapped a microphone to check if it worked. The pianist himself was waiting for his turn, occasionally warming up his fingers on an imaginary keyboard. People near him kept praising how excited they were to hear him play. That tension inside her grew heavier, not because she wanted attention, but because she didn't want anyone to think she was afraid. She wasn't afraid of failure. She had failed many times before. She was afraid of being misunderstood, of being judged before she even touched the keys. That feeling, that pressure, kept pulling at her, tugging her into directions. One part of her wanted to walk out of the hall quietly and disappear before more people looked at her with uncertainty. But another part of her, a deeper part, whispered gently inside her mind, "You came here for a reason." She didn't know how long she sat there before the next performer finished their piece. The audience clapped politely, and the host walked to the microphone again. "Next, we have an open slot," the host said. "Anyone from the list can come forward." There was a moment of silence. Her mother looked at her. "It's your decision," she said softly. The girl took a deep breath. Her hands trembled slightly, but she stood up anyway. She didn't say a word. She just rose, straightened herself, and held onto her mother's arm as they walked toward the stage. As she approached the piano again, she felt the weight of dozens of eyes turning toward her. The room wasn't completely silent, but the chatter grew quieter as people recognized her. She could feel the shift, the same mixture of curiosity, worry, and uncertainty she had sensed earlier. The renowned pianist looked at her again, his eyebrows raised in disbelief. He didn't say anything this time, but the expression itself was enough. The girl noticed the silence in his direction, but she kept walking. When she reached the piano, she paused for a moment. Her hand hovered near the bench, but she didn't sit down right away. Instead, she took another deep breath, letting the air fill her lungs slowly. She needed to remind herself that this moment was hers, not his. Her mother whispered, "I'm right here." Those words helped her more than anything else. She finally lowered herself onto the bench. Her fingers brushed lightly against the wooden edge of the piano as she adjusted her position. The surface felt familiar, smooth, and comforting. She placed her hands gently on her lap, not touching the keys just yet. The audience grew still, not because they expected something amazing, but because they didn't know what to expect at all. That uncertainty wrapped around the room like a thin layer of fog. The girl leaned forward slightly, letting her fingertips hover over the keyboard. She didn't press down on any keys. She just touched them lightly, feeling the coldness of the polished surface. Her nerves felt tight, but in a way that sharpened her focus even though she wasn't playing yet. The simple act of touching the keys made her heart swell with a strange mix of hope and determination. A quiet voice in the audience whispered, "She's really going to try." Another whispered back, "Let's just see what happens." She heard every word, but she didn't let them affect her. She had already decided she would play if they allowed her to. The host stepped forward gently and asked, "Are you ready?" The girl nodded. Her mother stood just a few steps behind her, hands clasped tightly, silently praying that nothing else would go wrong. The renowned pianist leaned against a wall, arms crossed, still watching her like an examiner waiting for a mistake. The girl took another deep breath. Her fingertips finally settled softly onto the keys. She didn't play a note, but her hands no longer trembled. In that moment, she felt something shift inside her. The fear didn't disappear, but it became smaller, shrinking beneath the warmth of her determination. She whispered very softly, barely loud enough for even herself to hear, "I can do this." No one else heard it, but that tiny sentence changed everything for her. She straightened her back, her fingers ready to begin. Her world was quiet, but her heart felt stronger than it had just minutes ago. The hall, filled with strangers, held its breath. Her mother watched her with hope. The pianist watched her with doubt. And the girl prepared herself to play, not to prove anything to anyone, but to reclaim the peace she almost lost. Her fingers rested lightly on the keys, waiting for the perfect moment to fall into motion. This moment, fragile and silent, was hers alone, and she wasn't going to let it slip away. The moment she sat at the piano, everything around her seemed to pause. The world, which moments ago had been filled with whispers, laughter, and the tension of the crowd, suddenly quieted. The room felt still, almost as if they were waiting for her to do something. She placed her fingers on the keys gently, taking in the texture of the instrument. The smooth surface of the piano felt familiar, even though the room and the people in it were anything but. Her breathing slowed, and she gave herself a moment, not rushing. She knew that once she started, everything would change. Her mind replayed the events of the past hours. She hadn't expected to be here, not like this. Her heart still raced from the earlier moments when the renowned pianist had mocked her, assuming she wasn't capable of anything special. The harsh words stung, but they didn't define her. The piano, on the other hand, was her true language, one that no one could take from her. The audience, still unsure of what to expect from this blind girl sitting before them, had fallen into an eerie silence. No one dared move, no one dared even breathe too loudly. They were waiting for her to make a mistake, waiting for her to fall. But she didn't. Her fingers found their rhythm on the keys, the melody flowing from her with a quiet strength. At first, the music was soft, hesitant, like dipping a toe into cold water. But with each passing note, her confidence grew, and the sound of the piano began to fill the space around her. The crowd, still stiff with anticipation, was now drawn in. She could feel their attention shifting, their energy aligning with hers. She played as if the piano was an extension of herself, her fingers moving fluidly over the keys with a grace she didn't always feel on the inside. The music spoke for her, for the years of practice, for the passion she had always carried but had never been able to express until now. The melody swelled, notes rising higher, reaching towards something beyond the room, beyond the judgment that had tried to bind her. She could feel the power of the music surging through her, the energy of the room bending to it, and she knew, deep inside, that this was her moment. She wasn't playing to prove anyone wrong. She was playing to show them who she truly was. Her fingers moved faster now, with purpose and precision. She played the parts that had always been the most challenging for her, not because they were difficult, but because they required a confidence she hadn't always known how to find. But here, in this room, with these people watching her, she finally found it. Her hands danced across the piano keys, and the audience, once filled with doubt and skepticism, was now entranced. They weren't just hearing the notes, they were feeling them. The music didn't just fill the room, it wrapped around them, creating a space where nothing else mattered. As the melody reached its peak, she slowed, letting the notes fall softly. There was a stillness now, a breathless pause in the room as the last chords hung in the air. She took her hands off the keys and sat back, her heart pounding, but her mind calm. For a moment, no one moved. It was as though the entire hall had been frozen in time. She wondered if she had made a mistake, if the silence meant she hadn't done enough. But then, slowly, the applause began, soft at first, like a gentle wave breaking on the shore. But it grew, louder and more powerful with each passing second. The sound of it filled her with warmth, a feeling she had never experienced before. It wasn't just polite clapping. This was real, heartfelt recognition. The audience wasn't just acknowledging her performance. They were seeing her. She stood, still trembling with the weight of the moment, and smiled, not because she needed to, but because it was the only way she knew how to respond. She didn't look around for approval. She didn't need anyone's validation. For the first time in a long time, she felt complete. As the applause continued, she caught sight of her mother in the crowd, her face a mixture of pride and disbelief. She hadn't expected this either. She hadn't expected her daughter to stand on a stage like this, to command a room with nothing but her hands and her music. The renowned pianist, who had been watching her from the side, stood motionless. She couldn't see his face, but she could feel his presence, heavy and uncertain. She didn't know if he was regretting his earlier judgment or simply watching in stunned silence. But it didn't matter. She had already proven everything she needed to prove, not to him, not to anyone else, but to herself. When the applause finally began to die down, the room remained quiet, but the air felt different, lighter, as if everyone had just shared something real. She slowly stepped away from the piano, her hands still shaking, but now in a way that felt good, like a release. One of the organizers approached her, his face beaming with excitement. "That was incredible," he said, his voice filled with awe. "You've truly amazed us all." She smiled, grateful, but didn't say anything. She didn't need words to explain how she felt. The music had done that for her. As she walked off the stage, her mother rushed to her side, her arms wrapping around her in an embrace that said more than words ever could. She held her daughter tight, as if to protect her from all the hurt that had come before this moment. "You did it," her mother whispered. "I did," she replied, her voice steady now. And as they made their way backstage, she didn't need to look over her shoulder to know that something had shifted. Something had changed in that room. She had done it. She had taken what was once used to belittle her and turned it into the very thing that would set her free. Her fingers still tingled from the keys, and for the first time, she felt that no matter what anyone else thought of her, she would never stop playing. Because music, for her, was always more than just sound. It was a way to make herself heard when no one else thought she could. And as she walked away, the applause still echoing in her ears, she knew that this was only the beginning. She sat quietly for a moment, taking in the warm air of the hall while steadying her breath. The day felt heavier than she expected. Part of her still carried the memory of the previous night, the whispers, the laughter, the way the world-famous pianist had dismissed her without knowing a thing about her. Yet here she was again, sitting backstage with her hands folded tightly together as if holding her own courage in place. The sound of soft footsteps approached, echoing lightly across the wooden floor. She recognized the careful rhythm and turned her head slightly. "You're early again," a gentle voice said. She offered a small smile. "I didn't want to rush, and it helps me calm down." The person stepped closer, their tone carrying quiet reassurance. "It's good you came early. Today is important. The room will be full, but don't let that worry you. Just be yourself." She nodded, though her heart fluttered. "I'll try." The hall was busier than yesterday. She could hear people adjusting equipment, speaking into microphones, and tuning their instruments. The sound of each activity painted small pictures in her mind. Every noise helped her imagine the scene, building a world she navigated with her ears rather than her eyes. She could tell when someone stepped onto the stage. The floor beneath them had a certain firmness, a soft echo that made it easy to recognize. Then she sensed a presence kneel beside her. "You feeling all right?" The same calm voice asked. "I think so," she whispered. "It's just a lot. Yesterday everything felt wrong, but today feels different, better. I just don't want to make a mistake." "You won't," the person replied. "You didn't yesterday. You showed everyone something they didn't expect, and today you'll show even more." She breathed out slowly and let her hands rest lightly against her dress. She could hear the audience arriving, shuffling feet, confused murmurs as they found their seats, programs flipping open, a few scattered coughs. The room slowly filled with life. Someone announced, "We'll begin in 5 minutes." 5 minutes. The words sank into her chest. She tried not to think about how many people were out there. She did not need to see them to feel the weight of their curiosity. The hall's energy grew stronger with every passing second. It was like standing near a river and hearing the rush of water before approaching the edge. Her companion noticed her tension. "If it helps," they said softly, "just focus on the music. Don't think about the crowd. Think about the first note, the way your fingers know where to go, the way your mind listens even when you're not thinking." She nodded again. That made sense. Music had always been her home, steady, familiar, something she could trust even when the world around her felt uncertain. A stage manager walked toward them. "It's time," they said gently. Her heart thudded. She stood slowly, holding her cane. The world around her felt larger now, like a door was opening into something unknown. She took a step forward. "I'm right here," her companion said quietly, walking beside her. Together, they made their way toward the piano. She could feel the polished wood under her fingertips when she reached it. The bench was cool and smooth. She slid onto it carefully. The hall fell into a deep hush. She could sense hundreds of eyes staring. Silence wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. She rested her hands on the keys, not pressing yet, just feeling their familiar shape. Her fingers trembled slightly. She breathed out again. A whisper from the side reached her. "Take your time." And she did. She let the silence sit for a few seconds. She listened to the room, to the waiting breath of the audience, to the space where something meaningful was about to begin. Then she played the first note. It floated into the air like a soft light. She felt her shoulders relax a little. She pressed the next keys, letting the melody grow. Her fingers moved slowly at first, learning the space again. The first few lines were gentle, almost fragile, but they carried a warmth that spread through the hall. As she continued, the music grew stronger. Her fingers remembered every detail, every pause and every rise. She didn't need to see the keys or the crowd. She didn't need applause or approval. All she needed was the connection between her and the notes she had practiced for years. The melody shifted into something deeper. She played with emotion instead of fear. Her hands danced across the keys, firm and confident. Each sound echoed beautifully, filling the hall with a calm that seemed to settle everyone in their seats. She could feel the energy of the room changing. People leaned forward. The air felt warmer, as if carrying her music gently from wall to wall. She forgot about the famous pianist who had mocked her. She forgot about the whispers from the night before. She forgot the fear that once tightened her chest. All she felt was the freedom of playing. Her fingers reached the heart of the piece, a part she always loved. The notes here were soft, but full of meaning, like a story she had lived through. As she played, she imagined a quiet dawn, the start of a gentle day. The way calm can sometimes feel stronger than any storm. When she neared the end, she slowed her hands, letting the final notes breathe. Each one lingered softly before fading into the silence of the hall. And then she stopped. For a moment, the world was completely still. She could hear nothing, no shuffling, no whispering, no movement. It felt as though the entire room had frozen. Then the hall erupted into applause. It wasn't polite applause. It wasn't the kind people gave out of duty. This was loud, full, rising like a wave. It surrounded her from every direction. She felt warmth rush to her face. Her hands trembled, but this time out of relief, not fear. She stood slowly from the bench, unsure if she should bow. She didn't want to do the wrong thing. Her companion stepped beside her and whispered, "Just smile. That's enough." She smiled softly. The applause grew even louder. Someone in the crowd stood. Then another, and another. She couldn't see it, but she could hear a soft rustle, a sound she recognized from videos others had described to her. People were standing for her, a standing ovation. Her throat tightened. She felt tears gather, but she blinked them away quickly. She had never felt this in her life. Not like this. Moments later, as the applause softened, the stage manager approached again. "That was beautiful," they whispered. "Truly." She gave a small nod, trying to gather herself. As she stepped away from the piano, someone further backstage murmured, "I wish the one who mocked her yesterday could see this now." She didn't respond. She wasn't thinking about him anymore. For the first time in a long time, she felt free, and the night wasn't over yet. She stood backstage for a long moment, letting the warmth of the applause settle inside her. Even after the hall had quieted, she could still feel it, the way the audience had risen for her, the way their cheers had filled every corner of the room. It felt unreal, like a dream she never expected to live. Her hands were still slightly shaky, and every breath carried a mix of disbelief and quiet joy. She had walked into this hall uncertain and afraid, but she was walking away from the piano with something she hadn't felt in years: confidence. The stage manager came closer and spoke softly. "You should take a moment to breathe. People might want to meet you later, but for now, just rest." She nodded. "Thank you." Her companion from before walked toward her, steps slow and careful. "You did more than play," they said. "You changed the room." She lowered her head, a shy smile forming. "I just played what I know." "No," they replied. "You played what you feel. That's different. And today, everyone felt it with you." She wasn't sure how to respond. Words didn't seem enough for what she felt inside. Her chest felt full, like she was finally meeting the version of herself she always hoped to be. A few minutes later, the hall began to settle. People still murmured excitedly as they walked out, their voices carrying bits of conversation. Some said things like, "Did you hear that girl?" or "That was the most moving performance of the day." Their words drifted toward her even though they didn't know she was listening. She stood quietly, hands folded, absorbing every sound. But then she sensed a sudden shift in the room, one set of footsteps that stood apart from the rest. Slow, heavy, hesitant. When the person stopped a few steps away from her, she recognized the uneasy breath. It was the renowned pianist who humiliated her the night before. She didn't move at first. She wasn't afraid, but she also wasn't sure what he wanted. He hadn't spoken yet, and the silence between them felt tense, like two different worlds trying to meet. Finally, he cleared his throat. "I didn't expect to see you here again." She stayed still, but kept her posture calm. "I came to play. That's all." There was a pause. His voice lowered, almost uncomfortable. "About yesterday, I acted carelessly. I spoke without thinking." She didn't rush to answer. She let him continue. "I assumed you were there to interrupt or create noise," he admitted. "I didn't know who you were. I didn't know what you could do." She took a slow breath. You didn't need to know who I was to be kind. Her words were gentle, but they hit him harder than anything else she could have said. The silence that followed was different now, full of realization. He exhaled. You're right. Then, with the tone she didn't expect from someone so accomplished, he said, your performance today, it was extraordinary. You play with more heart than most musicians I've met. She turned toward the direction of his voice. Thank you. It doesn't fix yesterday, he added quietly, but I hope it means something. It does, she said softly. People make mistakes, but they can learn from them. For a moment, neither of them spoke. He seemed unsure whether to stay or walk away. Then he took a small step back. I hope to hear you play again, he said before leaving. She stood still until his footsteps faded. She didn't feel anger, just closure. The moment gave her something she didn't know she needed, the chance to prove to herself that she didn't need anyone's approval to shine, not even his. Her companion approached from the side. Are you okay? I am, she said. Better than okay. They smiled warmly. Good, because something tells me today is only the beginning. She tilted her head, confused. What do you mean? Before they could answer, a gentle voice called from behind. Excuse me, may we speak with you? She turned slightly. There were two people approaching, one with a friendly tone and the other with a calm, confident presence. We represent a small music organization, the first person explained. We were here today because we're scouting young talent, and your performance moved us deeply. Her breath caught for a moment. Me? Yes, the person replied. We'd like to invite you to join our training program. It's a chance to study, perform, and grow. You don't have to decide now, but we'd be honored to have you. She felt a rush of emotion swirl inside her: surprise, excitement, and disbelief. She had always dreamed of learning more, of being part of something bigger, but she never thought she would be invited. Not like this. Why me? She asked quietly. The woman responded gently. Because you feel music, and that can't be taught. It can only be shared. Her companion placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. You deserve this. Her eyes warmed. She had spent years hiding in small corners, practicing alone, believing she would never have opportunities like this, and now doors were opening. She lowered her head humbly. I don't know what to say. Say what feels true, the woman said. And take your time. She took a deep breath. I'm honored, truly. We'll contact you soon, the woman replied kindly. As they walked away, her companion whispered, your life just changed. She let the words settle in. Changed, yes, it felt true. Later that evening, when the hall finally emptied, she sat on the stage alone, her hand resting gently on the piano. She felt the wood, the keys, the shape of the instrument that had carried her through endless days, good and bad. She thought about the girl she was yesterday, standing in a crowded room receiving unkind words she didn't deserve. And she thought about the girl she was today, standing tall on a stage, playing from her heart, earning a standing ovation. She whispered to herself, I'm not afraid anymore. The hall was quiet, but she didn't feel alone. The moment embraced her softly. Her companion returned one last time. Ready to go? She stood, touching the piano one last time. Yes, she said, I'm ready. As they walked toward the exit, she didn't feel small or invisible anymore. She felt like someone who had something to give to the world. Outside, the evening air was cool and calm. She lifted her face toward the sky, breathing in deeply. The world felt bigger, but instead of feeling lost in it, she felt like she finally belonged. Her journey wasn't over. It was only beginning. And with every step she took toward the future, she carried the sound of that standing ovation, the warmth of new possibilities, and the quiet, strong belief that she was capable of more than she ever imagined.